Okay guys, Constitutionality News here. A friend of mine sent me this video and I've already watched it through one time, and you don't want to know my first round comments. So I'm going to go back through it, let you view it, and of course stick my 2 cents worth in here and there.
Waffle House says it is cooperating with law enforcement after a video surfaced of a North Carolina police officer violently arresting a customer. Here's the video.
He's not supposed to be.
Now, the cop got his hand wrapped around a young man's throat, but the young man could still clearly be heard tell him to get his hands off of him. This is one monster tyrant cop.
I'm glad I'm recording this. He's not supposed to be doing that. He's not.
You see the officer's hand wrapped around Anthony Wall's neck. He slams him against a window and then the ground.
Yeah, he slammed him into the window, slammed him on the ground. Got his hand, just forcing his head down on the concrete. No, this is this cop's just ridiculous.
Wall, who went to the restaurant after attending his sister's prom, was charged with disorderly conduct. He does admit that he got into a heated argument with a Waffle House employee who later called police, but says the officer should have never handled him so aggressively.
You work hard at your job, you try to take some pride in what you're doing, and then a fink like this comes along and makes a rotten thing out of his badge.
I agree 100%, Hunter. But instead of charge, what really pissed me off about this one was the kid got charged with disorderly conduct. The officer ain't got charged with a damn thing. Although he should have been charged with use of excessive force, disorderly conduct of his own self, conduct unbecoming a police officer, whatever, something. He should have been charged with something. He shouldn't be allowed to just skate.
On the flip side of police doing incredible things, meanwhile, a Florida deputy is being called a hero after helping save a baby's life. Jeremy Nix was off duty. He was just heading home from work when a woman frantically flagged him down, hopped out of the car, holding her 3-month-old son who wasn't breathing. Nix there immediately sprang into action, trying to get the little boy to breathe. Earlier today, he told our own Mike Galanos just how dire this situation was.
Yeah, this is exactly the opposite of the first cop. This cop's off duty. The woman flags him down because she needs help. He stops and actually helps. He attempts to save the child's life.
Right away, I took him, went to my knees, checked his breath, checked him for heart rate. I had nothing. Tried to give him a few chest compressions. Like I said, he was rigid, so it was kind of tough. Give it a little more effort. Was able to get a couple of chest pumps in there, and that kind of kicked up a breath. Good. Which gave me a little hope. Yeah. At that point, give it a little bit more, and he gave me a second breath. And at that point, I had to make a determination whether I wait or I leave.
Officer Nix was about a half a mile away from the nearest hospital, and he decided not to wait for paramedics to arrive. He scooped up baby Kingston in his arms. He rushed him straight to the hospital, and it was that decision that doctors are crediting with saving the little baby's life. They say Kingston is going to be just fine, and the two have made a special bond.
Yeah, I bet that officer didn't get charged with carrying a child without a car seat either. But in this instance, I believe it could be overlooked. He saved a child's life, unlike the other officer who tried his best, who seemed to be trying to kill the other child. I mean, the young man was only 16 years old.
I mean, you see two videos we just showed you. Two very different sides of police. Helpful and possibly harmful. And the dual sides are leaving law enforcement with a real dilemma. Perception, because it's bad encounters that many people in minority communities say they see all too often.
Amen. And not just minority communities, but just the poorer communities. Doesn't matter whether it's white, black, Latino, whatever. If you're in a neighborhood that's less than affluent, the cops feel like they can just get away with whatever the hell they want to, or at least a number of them do.
So to talk about this, I want to bring in our guests, retired FBI Special Agent James Gagliano and retired LAPD Police Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. Thank you so much for being with us.
And guys, I want you to pay particular attention to this retired Lieutenant Dorsey. The lady makes a lot of sense. She tells it just like it is.
Cheryl, I want to get your take here as we saw this contrast. Is this just a case of there are a few bad eggs when it comes to this organization as a whole of policing?
Well, of course. I mean, I spent 20 years of my life there, and so I certainly saw more of the second version of police officers during my 20-year tenure. But listen, we have to admit and acknowledge that there are some officers who are ill-suited and don't have the right temperament to be police officers. That first incident at the Waffle House was not about complying. It was not about gaining control. It was about punishment. It was about, you're not doing what I'm telling you to do, and so now there's a price to pay. Thank God this young man didn't lose his life. And so unless and until there's substantive consequences for officers who misbehave and who use excessive force, and just terminating this guy or allowing him to have the gift of resignation and go on to another police department maybe is insufficient.
I agree. He needs to be held accountable for his actions. Just letting him go and let him go on his merry way to another police department, the same thing is going to happen all over again. I mean, where does it stop? He has to be held accountable.
There needs to be some personal financial liability on the part of officers who behave inappropriately, and this was clearly excessive and unnecessary.
And in many of these cases, we have seen actually no action being taken against the officers, James, because they feel that their lives are in danger, they say, in some of these cases. They also say, well, listen, this person is resisting arrest. I do what I have to do to make sure that this person is neutralized, they say. I mean, is that protocol? Is that what police officers are trained to do in handling a situation like we're seeing at the Waffle House?
I got to stop here. Yeah, police, I'm pretty sure police are trained in tactics to subdue somebody, but there's force and then there's force. I mean, this first guy was just absolutely out of damn control. And it's my opinion, he should, well, I'll keep my opinion to myself on that one. I'm sorry.
Sure, and Lynn, I spent 25 years working in inner city communities in upstate New York and in New York City. I agree with my colleague here. There is a thing called the use of force continuum, and officers and agents, federal agents, are taught how to apply use of force. So you're never supposed to use more force than is just necessary to bring somebody into custody. So let's establish right there that this clearly appears to be, from what we've seen, a case of
appears my ass it was a case of excessive force. Look at the difference in the size of that cop and that young man.
Excessive force. But we also have to couple that with the fact that we're living in different times right now. And the different times we're living in means...
Oh, please, man. Get a new line. Different times. This day and time. Blah, blah, blah. Same old, same old. It ain't no different now than it was 50 or 100 years ago. It's still, in fact, when I was a young man, when I was a child, we were taught if something happened, find a policeman. You can trust the police. Now it's absolutely reversed because so many bad cops are on the force today, and they need to come out of there. We need to get them out.
That people are being taught, or they're just being accustomed to, not complying with police officers' requests. I can tell you from experience that the worst thing that a police officer wants to respond to is a restaurant or a neighborhood that calls in and says, hey, we've got a rowdy customer, or we've got somebody that's not leaving when they're supposed to. Can officers respond? That is an officer's nightmare. You're hoping that by the time you get there, the person is gone. Because
no. In this case, this cop was looking for a fight, looking for somebody to beat on, and I'm pretty sure he was probably hoping this young man was still there so he could do what he did.
Because today, people just do not want to walk away from these situations, and it makes it very difficult. That does not in any way condone excessive force.
Well, he said a minute ago that people are taught to ignore commands, blah, blah, blah. No, we're not ignoring them. We're just exercising the rights we already had, and they don't like it.
And with what I've seen in this video, I agree with my colleague. I think this was a case of excessive force.
So, Cheryl, is part of the problem that police officers are being able to determine themselves how much force is needed considering the circumstances?
Well, the problem is that there's no accountability. And
There you go, right there. She said it. She said it just, oh my God, there is no accountability. That's exactly the damn problem. Their qualified and justified immunity gives them the power to think that they can do any damn thing.
so we understand that great deference is given to what a police officer says, and if they say they're in fear for their life, by and large, people want to believe that. But there was no reason for this officer to be fearful. I mean, you can compare and contrast the size of the officer to this young man. For starters, this was punishment. This was, you're not complying with me, and I encourage everyone to comply, because you never know which officer you're encountering. You don't know if it's a Darren Wilson or an Anthony Pantaleo who's gonna choke you to death because you don't comply. People not complying and being belligerent is inherent to police work. I don't get to punish you because you don't shut up, because you don't come here, because you don't turn around.
Amen, sister. They're not supposed to punish you just for being human.
We're taught and trained. We're the professionals, and you are not taught to punish someone because of their failure to comply.
Cheryl and James, I know this is such a larger conversation, but as we saw with that police officer that saved the little baby's life, there are heroes out there. Both of you have given your careers to this profession and done great things with it. So maybe it's communicating to the communities that there are people like all of you out there as well. Thanks so much for being with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, guys. I'm going to stop right here. It's about the end of the video. There's only a couple seconds left. My opinion, the first cop ought to be booted off the force and never, ever be allowed to serve on any other police force anywhere. I don't care, even as a security guard. He has no business policing the public in any way whatsoever. The second officer, Jeremy Nix, I think he should be commended. He did a fine job. Now, what he would be like around an adult, basically in the other situation, with a so-called unruly customer, I don't know. But for now, I'll condemn number one and commend number two. Thank you and have a good evening. This is Constitutionality News, and we're out of here.